Welcome to Mental Health Momentum, a Silicon Slopes podcast. I'm Dr. David Morgan. I'm a licensed psychologist and the director of mental health awareness here at Silicon Slopes. Now, on this podcast, we talk about mental health issues in business and beyond, and we look for solutions. I'm going to introduce my guest to you today. This is Aimee Winder-Newton. Aimee, hello.
Hello.
Thank you for being here. Aimee and I met at a Promise to Live event a couple months ago, and you were a speaker there, and I thought, okay, I have to have her on the podcast because you were amazing. So,
thanks.
So we'll see how this
Pleasure.
goes, though.
It'll be great.
Okay,
I'm
I'm
excited.
sure it will. Let me tell you about Aimee. She serves as a senior advisor to Governor Cox and is the director of the Utah Office of Families. She has championed youth mental health education, social media legislation, home visiting programs for vulnerable families, and other upstream policies to strengthen families in Utah so children can have better outcomes. Aimee also serves on the Salt Lake County Council for now.
Till the end of the year.
That's right. She decided that that's a time and season that's coming to an end, and is also on the county's Behavioral Health Service Advisories Council. She was a 2020 candidate for Utah governor and was recognized by Utah Business Magazine in 2024 as one of Utah's most influential women. She is a graduate of the University of Utah. She and her husband, Matt, have been married for 32 years and have raised 4 children. They love spending time with their grandbaby. Just one grandbaby
Just
so
one,
far?
yeah.
Okay. So I'm beating you by 5.
Lucky.
So lucky.
So
Isn't it the
fun.
best?
It really is.
It's
It really
so
is.
good.
There's nothing better.
How old's your grandbaby?
She's 2.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
It's fun.
We were at a soccer game for one of our grandsons on Saturday, and it was the last game of the season, and it was his first season playing. He's in kindergarten, and he got a medal at the end, and he was so happy.
That's cute.
He was just beaming because it was the first time he had gotten anything. He's the second in the family, so he's seen his older brother, go through some of these things and get some stuff. So it was his own time.
That's
Anyway,
awesome.
it's remarkable.
It really is.
We 100% recommend grandparenting. 5 out of 5 stars.
That's right. And we have our birth rate's falling in Utah, so we need people
Seriously.
to get moving
to figure out how good this
it's
is.
good stuff.
Yes, it is
Yeah,
good stuff.
It really is.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, and as we were talking a little bit earlier, just I love your interest in mental health, and I love that it's being recognized and talked about at senior government levels, because it's not something that we can just like, oh, that's a great thing, let's put it on page 7 of the agenda, right? Because it's affecting everybody.
Absolutely.
And it's affecting systems and not just individuals. And so you mentioned that you, with permission, you have a story of one of your children. Is that right?
Yeah,
and kind
I
of their
do.
struggles with mental health.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this is a priority for Governor Cox. And when I was first hired on in this role, he said, look, I'm worried about youth mental health. We're not going to have enough professionals to take care of kids after the fact. Thus, the reason to go upstream and figure out what's causing these. And so, but I have my own personal experience with my own family related to mental health. And so I feel like I have this personal tie to understand it that helps in my day job. Several years ago, my son was struggling with suicide ideation, and it was really a crazy story because it was like at 10 o'clock at night, and this was long before I was working for the state. He came in to me and he said, Mom, I'm done. I want to die.
So he actually came to you.
He came to me and told me this. And I was panicked. My husband was out of town for work, and I was like, I don't even know what I do in this circumstance. Do I call 911? Do I take him to an emergency room? Like, what do I do?
Was this before 988?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, this is one reason why I got involved in the 988 thing. So I took him to an emergency room. I since learned there's some hospitals better than others for handling this, right? We waited for a while, got sent home. We ended up back in an emergency room days later, and he was hospitalized. He was in a crisis situation. And so, and he spent 3 days in that. And I learned there's got to be better help for people.
Right.
And so at the time I was a county council member, and I thought, man, if I as a county council member don't even know who to call, and we're the mental health authority for the state, like what does everybody else do? So I started talking with some of my friends who are legislators, like Representative Ellison and Senator Thatcher, and we're like, we need a crisis line. And we talked through the 3-digit crisis line for a while. I was on the state's Behavioral Health Crisis Commission at the time because of this experience. And that's kind of something that helped us push for 988 and some of
Safe UT
some of
and
the
all
other
that,
some of the other things. Safe UT was in operation in some schools at that time, but that wasn't something I was super familiar with either.
Clearly
and so,
not, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, this was like
As you're
10
driving your
years
son
ago.
to the emergency room. Yeah.
Yeah. And so anyway, I am just a big proponent of we've got to get people the information. And it's so interesting to see how over the last 10 years, things have changed so much. People talk about this openly. I've shared that I had postpartum depression after my second baby. My husband struggled with a time period after we were first married where he was struggling with depression.
Yeah.
I have kids who have dealt with anxiety. Like we know what this is. And I love that people are more willing to talk about it. It helps so much. But we also have to look at what's causing this. And it's been fun to see over time, even, it used to be, oh, yeah, you're struggling. Okay, here's some medication. And now I feel like doctors are even getting better at saying, like, you got to look at what are you doing for exercise? Are you outside? We need to touch grass. Like, how are you eating? Yeah, all of this. Your sleep. Sleep is the number one, right? I think for me anyway. And I just think it's come a long way. So it's really cool to see that.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, Governor Cox is worried about, like, how do we prevent some of this with the social media issues that we're seeing today?
And I think that is the best solution to this. Remediation, sure, I think we've largely figured that out. We know how to treat these issues fairly effectively. But the big question, and now that more people are recognizing those issues in themselves and they're going and looking for help, and you're right, and Governor Cox has rightly surmised that there is a dearth of mental health professionals to do that, and the system becomes overwhelmed quickly, especially hopefully we don't have pandemics super often,
right?
But COVID shone a spotlight on that, on just how overwhelmed the system was. I think we're finally getting to a point where we have a little better access, maybe almost like pre-COVID, but even then, it's not like it used to be. And so I used to tell people, shop around for a therapist, find one you like. And then in COVID, I was like, take anyone you can find, because otherwise you're going to be on a waiting list for 7 months. And then you decide you don't like that person, and you're going to be on another waiting list for another 7 months. And that's going to be problematic. And I do love that people are thinking a little differently. I have a good friend who went to a psychiatrist and was looking for mental health help. And I thought, well, they're going to put her on medication because that's the psychiatrist's toolbox is medication.
Right.
And the psychiatrist told her to get better sleep and didn't put her on medication right away. And I was shocked when I heard it. I thought, wow, I need to find out about this person and what's going on with her. Yeah.
Some will even say you need to be off your phone for 2 weeks before I'll consider medication. Because now, when you start looking at the data on when social media was invented in 2009, 2010, or started to become popular then, I guess. And then how depression and anxiety rates, especially among young women, have skyrocketed. Yeah. Just in those few years. It is crazy to see the spike. And so we know that phones are having a detrimental effect on these kids and their mental health.
And it was when we first moved here to Utah several years ago, and I think it was maybe part of the Live On campaign, or it was one of them. And there were billboards talking about, the detriments of social media to minors. And I remember seeing one that said it caused mental health issues. And I thought, well, I don't know about that, because just as a social scientist, I know what causation means and what and correlation means. And then I read Dr. Jonathan Haidt's book, The Anxious Generation, and I was like, oh my heavens, he's right.
Yeah.
And there are, and a lot of the studies are correlational for sure, but the evidence is overwhelmingly in favor of that. And there are some causal indicators as well to suggest that this is not just, it's probably that. We know that this is having a causal effect on our youth. And I've often wondered, like your children, what are their age ranges?
So my kids are all in their 20s now. So I have.
So they grew up in this same experience.
Well, my older two kind of missed the big social media. Like they didn't really deal with social media. They were older. They were over 16, I think, by the time social media started to become a thing. And so it wasn't as much of an issue for them. But yeah, my younger two, my third one was kind of the guinea pig. Yeah, exactly. We let him have it when he was 13 and a half.
Facebook, Instagram sounds great.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Farmville, go ahead and play it.
He will say it was not a good thing for him. Yeah. And so when his brother came around the corner 2 years later, at that age, we're like, you need to wait till you're 16 to have any social media. And that was definitely the right call. But yeah, Jonathan Haidt's stuff is amazing.
He's
What he's doing
genius,
and creating a movement within the country even
Yeah.
and the world on this issue is just pretty remarkable.
I love that. And so is all of Utah, was there legislation passed about phones in school?
We were the first state in the nation to pass comprehensive social media policy that basically reined in social media companies. That was passed in 2024, and then it's been hung up in the courts, right? Yeah. So we knew that would happen, but we think we've got a good case. But yes, recently, this last session, we got a bell-to-bell ban. Actually, a ban isn't the right word. It's really a recommendation from the state of like, here's the default is no phones from the first bell of the day to the last bell of the day. And then school districts can make tweaks, within that if they want to, or if they need to. But yeah, it's so good for these kids to get a break.
It's so good.
They're getting pummeled with so much negative information, addictive algorithms that make them want to continually scroll, addiction issues where they feel like they need to have their phone all the time, bullying. I mean, you name it, body image issues. There's just so many problems. And so I am thrilled to see that parents are starting to step up. It's hard as a parent.
It's so hard.
Like this is a battle. Who wants to fight this? And I always tell parents, look, you are going to have a battle to fight either way. You can either fight the battle on the front end and draw your boundaries and say, you're not going to get a phone until high school, or smartphone till high school. And you're not going to get social media till you're 16 or 17 or 18 or whatever you decide, right? Or you can give it to them early and then watch as their life starts to crumble before your eyes. Seriously. And you're fighting other battles like not wanting to go to school or, feeling like they have no friends or, whatever. It's so much easier to do the first fight, which is delay. Yeah.
Because everyone's doing it, that's why people want to be a part of it, right? And that's the hard part. I remember our son, I think when he was maybe 13 or 14, so this would have been in the I'm doing my math, mid-2000s. And he said, Dad, I'm the only kid in my class that doesn't have a phone. And I believed him, because it was our first and we didn't know, we thought, we barely had phones ourselves that we had, cell phones that we had purchased. Smartphones hadn't even come out by then. And we thought, well, yeah, maybe that's an okay thing to get. Not even, and I think, whatever, parents can make their own decisions, but it was because of that peer pressure, right? That everyone was doing it. So I love, and Dr. Haidt talks about this in The Anxious Generation. He says, if everyone can get on board with this, then it's going to be fine, because then it's normal for everyone. If no one has a phone from bell to bell, then it's okay. Then you're just like everybody else. It's when they feel different than everybody else that causes the grief and the consternation. And then parents are like, well, I don't want them to feel in distress. But if they're just like, no, it's cool because no one has a phone at school.
Yeah.
And that'll make such a difference. So it'll be interesting to see, like, our grandkids' generation. I'm fascinated to see what they will do with this, because their parents will have horror stories and they'll make some decisions probably different than some of us parents that that didn't know exactly what was going on, or maybe just went with the flow. So yeah, I'm very interested to see how that will react.
One of the things that we get worried about is how much kids are seeing their parents on their phones, because there's a few issues with that. The first one is you're setting the example, right? I think my 2-year-old granddaughter, if she sees all of us on our phones, what does she want? She's
when they go for your
phone.
screen,
right? They want a screen. They want screens, right? It's so hard to fight
your
that
watch.
out.
They'll go for your watch.
Yes, yes, and they're digital natives. They know how these things work. But you have that piece where we're setting bad examples for our kids, because it's hard for all of us as parents, and we have fully developed brains.
Right.
But you also have the problem of these kids feeling like they're not getting the attention they need, and those deeper conversations from their parents. We have parents who are going to kids' recitals and they're on their phone, right? And the kids notice that. We have kids who are doing whatever it takes to try to get a parent's attention. It's hard to compete with Instagram when you're a kid, right? For your parents' attention. And so that's something we're really worried about. We actually started a campaign called the Chat Campaign. You can go to letschat.utah.gov. And it focuses on, yes, it's going right now. It focuses on parent-child connection and just encouraging, like, even if you can connect for 10 minutes a day, even if you can just make a priority to sit down and have dinner together with phones put away, even if your dinner's Chick-fil-A or whatever, like that's fine. The data is still so clear that having dinner with your family is such a good protective factor against so many things. And we know too, the data is so strong on positive childhood experiences and those connections and the feeling that you have support and what it does to overcome childhood trauma and so many other issues. And so we're really making a focus on this chat campaign for parents and kids to connect. And a reminder to parents that, like, please put your own phones away. Yeah. They're watching you. They don't want to have to compete with that. Like, set the example. And it's hard. I struggle with it.
So
all
hard.
of us struggle with it, right? Too many phones.
And I think that it's one of the reasons it's hard. Well, one of the reasons is because we've become addicted to our phones and we want that constant stimulation. I remember thinking just the other day, I said, I used to be able to go to the bathroom without looking at my phone. I remember a time in my life when I could do that, right? And now it's like, well, no, you have to do that. You have to scroll, you have to look. And it's like, when did that change? When all of a sudden I have to have like this constant,
your phone has to be with you all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You can't leave it. Your watch will go off if you walk away too far from it. But I think connection has always been tricky for human beings, especially at an emotional level, and that kind of true emotional intimacy that eludes many, many relationships. And so now we have an excellent distraction from that.
Right.
Because I think even, in the 1950s, there were probably some families where it was tricky to sit down and have maybe a deep conversation about something, but you had no other option.
Right.
Because there was nothing to do. You all sat at the dinner table and you just looked at each other, could stare at your mashed potatoes, I suppose, and some people probably did. That connection is so important because, like you said, not only is it a protective factor, but it builds those relationships.
Yeah.
And it teaches us how to interact with one another. And then we can learn how to connect with other people and deepen those relationships.
Right. Well, and relationships too. I mean, when we're talking about mental health, having friendships where you have real people that you can connect with and parents or family members, that is such an important piece.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's something that so many of our kids need. My husband has this group of friends, and he has one best friend in particular that he goes and does stuff with. And I love it because they'll go on runs or they'll go hiking together. And this friend is so good. He's a good like empath. But I'm like, he's saving us thousands of dollars in therapy, this
so
guy.
True.
Because just for my husband to have somebody that he can go to and just talk about life and whatever and, talk through issues or problems. I'm like, this is so good. We all need friends. Yeah. But we are so distracted these days. I mean, even as adults, we need it. We need that connection. We need friends. We need that family connection. And we all can do better.
Yeah. And that's the preventative stuff, the upstream stuff that we're talking about. We are... like I said, we're really great at fishing people out of the river. We've become pretty good at that, but trying to figure out why are they falling in the river in the first place. And we don't talk nearly enough about prevention. And I don't know that there's a lot of resources out there. There are, and it's like connection and stuff, but we need to maybe organize them in a way so that people understand, okay, this is what you can do. And most of it, well, it's probably no cost.
Yeah.
I mean, just things that we can do that are going to improve your mental health and create a greater foundation of stability so that when you do get knocked down, which we will, that it's easier to get back up because you have something that you've built on by then. We need to be talking way more about prevention, and it'll be 1,000 times cheaper than remediation. And it's better as well because then we feel better about it. And it won't prevent everything, but it'll prevent enough so that I think maybe that overwhelm won't happen when we get to these points where we're just in crisis situation because we've got too many problems and not enough helpers.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. I want to talk a little bit about social media as well. And you talked about how the Utah law is held up in the courts, but recently there have been some judgments against social media companies. And like you were saying, when it first came out and we didn't know and we just gave it to our kids, it was probably pretty innocuous then. I mean, back at that time, because I don't think people were pulling strings like they are now, but now it is I hate to say it, it's a conspiracy. I mean, it's a conspiracy to keep us hooked and very much like big tobacco, where they knew long before the public knew that nicotine was addictive, but they just, your doctor's smoking in your face, back then. And now I think that people are starting to recognize that the people that are in charge of this, their goal is to keep you involved in that and to keep you hooked.
Absolutely.
And if there is negative outcomes because of that, there needs to be some accountability. So yeah, I'm just interested because it's been in the past few months that those, I think there was one in California and one in Arizona, right? Where
New Mexico.
New Mexico, right? Where the judgments did you see that coming? Did you?
Well, all I can say is we cheered. I mean, big cheers
Totally,
because that helps us in our lawsuits. We're also, I mean, not only is our legislation being held up in the courts where social media companies are suing
Sure.
to try to hold those up, but we are actively suing social media companies for the harm that they've caused Utah children. And so we've got Snapchat, TikTok, Meta, those lawsuits are out there, and we know that's going to impact our suits for the state of Utah, which is fantastic. You don't see change until you have some friction.
That's so true.
And now that these social media companies are having whistleblowers who are showing that they know it's harming mental health and they're doing it anyway, they don't care about these kids. They care about money. They're getting so much money from being able to advertise and keep people scrolling, both kids and adults, right? They're just making hand over fist so much money. These are some of the wealthiest companies in America. And when our kids are used as pawns for big tech to load their pockets, like that's a concern for us. And so I think this is really important that these cases that we're seeing, these cases go through, because it will impact us directly. And it's about time.
I agree. It'll be fascinating the next 5 years just to see what happens, how things change. And you're right. And unless there's friction, unless there's a voice of opposition, then things rarely change. And that's on us.
Yeah.
As a society, right? And too often we just kind of let things go.
Right.
And we say, well, it's just the way it is. What can I do? But it has to start with the individual.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I mean, we see the little changes that they are doing in response. Like, for instance, when we passed our legislation, it was shortly after that Instagram did their teen accounts. Now, their teen accounts program does not keep your teen safe. Like, it is not a good fix. But it implemented a couple of the things that we were trying to do. And so we're seeing that. And after this lawsuit, these recent lawsuits, boy, you're starting to see a few things change. I mean, we're seeing even other countries like Australia banning social media for kids under 16.
That's right. Like a countrywide ban. I saw that.
A ban altogether because they know it's not safe for their kids. So I'm optimistic that we're going to see some good changes, that, that Congress, that the courts will hold these social media companies accountable, and that we will be able to keep our kids safe. But this has been a grueling process to go through. And
in the meantime, it falls to parents, right? I mean, and I love that this current initiative you have going on with the communication and trying to increase that connection, because if people are talking about it, we're almost back to the beginning of the podcast when your son came to you and told you about, his dark thoughts, and how great that he came to you.
Yeah. I
right?
agreed.
That you had that relationship with him where he would come and share something that he probably didn't want to tell a single other person in the world. No one wants to talk about those things. We still don't want to talk about those things. And yet he had the confidence to come talk to you about it. And that speaks to the relationship you had with him. As parents and parent figures develop these relationships with youth, I think that is part of that preventative upstream stuff where they can come and talk, and we can learn about these things maybe before it gets to that point. You have a conversation with your son and say, I'm so glad you told me about that. And then you navigate the crisis and then say, next time, come talk to me after you've had a bad day, right? And not the 50 bad days in a row that had to build up to the point where you think about ending your life, because it doesn't just start with that. And so, as we open those channels of communication and develop those relationships with people, I think that'll make a huge difference. And then we attack it from the other, but it needs to be attacked from all sides. This is a multi-front war that if we're only fighting on one front or zero fronts, no wonder we're losing.
Yeah. Well, I got to tell you how the story with my son ended. He, after that experience, after being hospitalized and seeing some of the people that he was with, in fact, when we picked him up, he had written a note to each of the people in his unit and left him kind of a note of encouragement, which that just warmed my heart as a mom. But he ended up deciding he wanted to go work for uni as a psych tech. So the University of Utah Neuropsychiatric Institute back then, now it's Huntsman Mental Health Institute. But He worked as a psych tech. He wanted to be a social worker. He switched gears and decided he wanted to become a school teacher, and he's a junior high English teacher.
Oh, wow.
And loves the kids and recognizes that they have hard struggles and is able to give back in that way to help give them the boost that they need, and the support that they need. So anyway, it's been great to see his life, kind of the lessons that he learned from those hard things and how it has changed him.
I love that. And I love how people that go through hard things, one of the greatest benefits of that is to be able to help people through the same thing, right? To say, I know where you've been, and let me show you the way out, because I figured that out myself. And I think that's the advantage to that. So maybe nothing is really lost, even in all the tragedies. There's something that can happen for that. So
we always learn from the hard things we have to go through.
Exactly.
Right?
Or we should.
Yeah.
Exactly. Aimee, thank you so much for talking with me today. Thanks for all the work you're doing for State of Utah and Governor Cox. It's amazing. It's a great place to live, isn't it?
It is. Utah's the best.
That's right. You heard it here first. Silicon Slopes, Utah.
Yes, that's right.
And thanks everyone for listening today. Remember that change starts with you, and together we can increase our mental health momentum.